What we're going to be talking about today is unlocking data silos with powerful integrations with ZOA Creator. So everyone from the first keynote and what Raji mentioned right before lunch, integrations are super important. So I'm not going to spend too much time repeating, the whole example of you have all these apps and information in different places and you need to tie it all together. Instead, we're actually going to go through and build an integration from scratch, and that's going to be the key part of this integration today. But first, as a little bit of recap as to pretty much the entire part of the conference on integration and the importance of it, I'm going to talk about why we want to integrate in the first place. I'm going to explain the different couple types of integrations, and then we're going to build one from scratch. So why do you want to integrate? So apps can't be these disconnected silos. So like we mentioned before, except everyone has a different analogy. Some people use puzzle pieces, some people use squares, but I'll use ribbons. You have information in different places for different apps, whether they're Zoho apps or other apps, it doesn't matter. And the whole goal is you need to tie them all together. That's ZOA Creator. So ZOA Creator is the database, and you kind of want that to be your central storage place where everyone's information from other apps can come, interact with your data, and then you can manipulate that data however you want to, and then ideally make actionable business decisions based on that data. So a couple examples of integrations. You can see I was working on this presentation last night at 3 in the morning, because that's when I took the screenshot, and that's how cold it was back in Austin, where I'm from. So whenever you Google Austin, Texas, and weather, it's automatically going to show you a nice little picture. It shows you the forecast for the week. And where is it exactly pulling that information from? Well, it's actually pulling it from weather.com, and it actually pulls information from there and asks weather.com, hey, let me see this information for Austin and the weather for the current time, and display it here out of convenience for you. This way you don't actually have to click on weather.com to see the weather. It kind of helps you and saves you a step from seeing how cold or hot it is. I guess it is pretty cold back home. Another example is Eventbrite. So when everyone registered for the event today, you'll see a couple of different integrations. Everyone sees social media integrations on pretty much every website you have, because whatever you do, somebody wants you to tweet about it, somebody wants you to Facebook about it, somebody wants you to like something. And so you have those integrations available. You also have calendar integrations in the bottom left corner where you can add it to your Outlook calendar or Google Calendar if you use those. And you also get a map that pops up that shows you exactly where our offices are. And all that's happening at your convenience in one place. So it's going to pull information from Google and show that map, or it's going to send information to your social media or your websites or your calendars with information about the event as well. So there's 3 main kinds of integrations. So you would sit there and you'd call Movie Phone, and Kramer, if you don't know the backstory to this episode, he got a new phone number for his apartment, and it was like 555 Gone instead of phone, I guess. So like the number was mixed up. So he'd get all these wrong calls for people looking for Movie Phone. But George has to tell Kramer what he wants to see. Kramer has to look it up in the local paper, and then Kramer tells George the time. And then if you watch the rest of the episode, you'll find out that the time that George listened to was the wrong time, and he gets into this big situation, as they always do in Seinfeld. And that's kind of how it works. It was a really manual process, and it almost takes close to 5 minutes to figure out exactly what time a movie is playing and where it's playing near you. Now you Google a movie, and you get thrown a bunch of information all at one time. So you get movie information about upcoming showtimes in the middle, and then on the right-hand side, it's going to pull information from Wikipedia, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes. It'll give you ratings. It'll also show you what local news there are about the title as well. So Google's doing all these integrations, pulling all this information from different places to kind of make it easier for you to be able to work with a simple search that you did was just American Sniper, the movie, or any movie name. Another example of an integration is sharing information between apps. So if you've played Candy Crush, then this is probably the most painful screen that you've ever seen in your life. It's because when you hit a certain number of levels, you have to sit there and ask your friends for a ticket in order to be able to proceed. Clearly, my skill wasn't good enough for me to proceed to the next level. I had to go and ask my friends for tickets and kind of hope that they were either playing the game already or invite them to play the game themselves so they could give me a ticket. So what happens here is in Candy Crush, it's pulling information from Facebook. It's going to get your entire friends list, and you can send invites to people, and if they're nice enough, they'll help you out with a ticket, and if they don't like you, they'll ignore the request and not give you a ticket. But there's no reason that in the game of asking friends for help to proceed, you should have to find someone's username, type in the username, and then add them as a friend, send a request, get the answer back, and then be able to ask them. You already have friends on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure if they were your real friends, then they'd help you out with the ticket. If they're not giving you a ticket back, then chances are they're not your real friend. Last thing we're going to talk about, a type of integration is going to be actionable business intelligence. So a lot of times, maybe you're in a shipping company, and every time it snows, your packages get delayed. You wouldn't really ever know that. You know, it might be in your head that, hey, it kind of, you know, it's going to snow this week, so my packages might get delayed, but you won't really know how much does that really affect my business. So what you can do is you can maybe ask for historical information from the Weather Channel about how much did it snow this day, or let me know every day that it snowed over 2 inches, or certain roads got closed down, or something serious happened, and then compare that with your internal business data of shipping information and delivery dates, and see, you know, how much has it really affected my business. So you can pull information from a third-party website, compare it with your own, and then be able to figure out, all right, if it's going to snow this week, then maybe I should ship my stuff out a couple of days early so my customer actually gets whatever they're wanting from us. So what we're going to be doing today and spending the most part about the next 30 minutes of the session is going to be using ZOA Creator to integrate with apps. So first and foremost, one of the main advantages of using ZOA Creator is you get to be a part of the Zoho suite. So on day one, when we were doing the keynote and the introductions, we asked people, you know, how many Zoho apps they were using. And so the advantages of using Zoho in general is ZOA Creator has pre-built integrations to talk to other Zoho products for you. So you don't have to do any code, you don't have to do anything too fancy, you just drag a small little function over, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then you can either send information to the CRM, you can update a contact in there, maybe you can add a new contact in there. Same way you can update your reports, recruit software, help desk software, your calendar, you can create events, a lot of different integrations just pre-built for you because you're a part of the Zoho family, and that's kind of one of the big advantages of the Zoho suite. But if you don't like us that much and you want to use our competitors, then that's cool too. We don't hate. So Salesforce, Twilio, Screen Magic, there's a bunch of different apps here, QuickBooks, Google Apps, whatever it is. Salesforce, the most popular CRM software, Google Apps, most popular email software, QuickBooks, most popular accounting software, and Twilio, Screen Magic, all these guys do text message sending for you as well. So whether you like our stuff and you use it, or whether you use a competitor stuff, we don't care. We just want to make sure that you're productive and that Zoho Creator can talk to everything and kind of automate your life for you. So all these integrations that we talked about, whether it's, you know, actionable business intelligence, sharing information between apps, or making something more convenient for you, they all lay on a foundation that's basically you're either getting information from somewhere or you're sending your information somewhere. And it could be both at the same time. That entire concept of just sharing information to and from your information and someone else's, that's an API. So an API is kind of like the language that these guys talk to each other. That's how two applications can communicate. I'm going to take a quick poll to kind of see what tech levels are. Who already knew what an API was? Raise your hand. All right, good, good. Who had no idea what an API was? How many people are scared by the word API? All right. So after this session, we're hoping that nobody's too scared because we're going to actually go out and build one out. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be building a integration with Zoho Creator data with Google Maps completely from scratch. We're not going to do anything else. So this is going to be my final result. It's a report that we have, and we can see an example of it. This is where your screens would probably help. So this is an example of it. You can see real life. Presentation, same thing. And these are, the last column there is estimated delivery distance. So what I'm trying to do is I want to know how far is this location that someone enters as their shipping address, how far is it from our Zoho offices here in California? So there's a Starbucks across the street, across the highway by my hotel. That's 1.6 miles. Jerry's World, aka Cowboy Stadium, is about 1,600 miles. And then Disneyland is 372. So the three happiest places on the world: Disneyland, Jerry's World, and Starbucks, that everybody loves. And then this is the form that people would see when they fill it out, when my customers would see. This is like an embedded form, so it's kind of stripped and it's not pretty. I'm not going to go into making it look pretty. This is just, you know, the public form, right? And you can see the public form here. It's in real life, and we'll fill it out later. So first step when you got to do an API integration or an integration of any sort is you need to do your research. How do you research for anything, whether it's a paper in school or trying to learn something today? You hop on Google. So what you need to do is just search on Google, find the product name that you want to integrate with, and type in API at the end of it. 9 out of 10 times, if they're a cool company, they'll have a public API for you to be able to use. So what we're going to be using today is called the Google Directions API. So a quick search took me straight here. So what we're looking for on these API guides, and this is one of the biggest problems with integrations, is every website that you want to integrate with has their information organized differently. If you go to Zoho's API, you're going to see it organized in some shape or form. If you go to a third-party company like Google or Salesforce or somebody else, they're going to have their information organized a different way. But there's three pieces of information that we kind of want to pull out. You can call them needles in the haystack, if you will. First one's going to be an API key. A second one is going to be finding out the usage limits. And the third one is going to be the web address for the request. So let's talk about each one of these in depth a little bit more. So first things first, an API key. This is a randomly generated, usually string of characters that looks all funky, and we'll see a couple examples in a bit. But this is going to be the unique identifier for you. Google wants to know in this example who is accessing their information. Same way if someone was accessing your creator information, you want to know exactly who it is that's requesting it so you can identify them. So if they're doing something malicious, you can cut off that user. So you don't want anonymous people to come in. Almost every API is going to have some sense of authentication in order to prevent any kind of malicious activity from happening. And this way they can have a record of who's done what with their API. Second thing we want to find out is a usage limit. So imagine two people having a conversation. I really wish I had a Seinfeld example for this, but I don't. Two people talking to somebody, and you ask them a question. So if I ask too many questions, then you won't be able to answer me quick enough. That's kind of what a usage limit is. How many times you can ask somebody a question before they almost get flustered or they don't want to put that much effort into it. So in Google Directions example, we can do 2 requests a second. So I can kind of ask 2 questions to Google every second of the day. But at the same time, I can only ask 2,500 questions a day. Because if I sat there and asked this gentleman here 2,500 questions in a day, he'd probably really hate me. So after that, he'd stop talking. Same way, Google's going to stop talking to me after that many requests. Some companies, depending on how their business structure works, you can pay Google and be like, hey, I want to ask for more requests per day. Then Google, being the money-hungry people that they are, they'll say, hey, pay me $100 and you can get this many requests. Or you can request even faster. Then there's something called a request URL. And a request URL, we'll go into a little bit more detail about how this is built, but there's basically a base part of it, which is asking Google for the information. So we're going to the Google APIs and we're asking for direction information. And the last part is a parameter. So parameters are like criteria. So imagine them to be kind of like the, X equals something as a variable that you would create for like maybe a filter for a view, for example. So I did a little bit of research on the Google website, and I kind of recapped all the information. The website address, the usage limit, and my API key. Rule number 1 of development, you probably shouldn't share your API key with that many people. Lucky for me, this is a fake account, and I don't care if you make me in trouble because my name's not even on it, so it doesn't matter. But if you feel like using the API key, you can, because you'll have access to the presentation later. So the next step is actually building out our request. Making an API request is kind of like ordering from the soup guy, right? So you have to do things a certain way, format the request a certain proper way, and if you don't format it the right way, then you're not going to get soup, and you're not going to get the information that you want back, right? So there's 3 key things that we're looking for, or we have to tell Google when we want to ask them for information about directions, right? First thing they want to know is who's asking me for information. So that's your access key. Every time you make an API call, you probably have to include the key somewhere. Then, in the sense of, in this example for directions, if you want directions, there are only 2 things you got to tell me. Where are you coming from and where are you going, right? So you have an origin spot and a destination spot. So I got an example built out down here with the fake access key, but it's going to give me from Austin to Dallas, and it'll show me, it'll give me back information, a lot of information. But sometimes when I want directions, I can go a step further. So there's some optional things I may want to know. Maybe I'm not driving, maybe I'm walking, or maybe I'm taking the guy's bike if I'm driving around somewhere locally. Maybe I want it in a different language. Or maybe I don't have money so I can avoid tolls. Or I'm riding a bike so I want to avoid highways as well. Different optional parameters can be added as well, and they just keep getting tagged on. So whenever you tag on a parameter, all you got to do is say and, because you're asking for one more thing. And you're saying the mode equals walking, the language equals ES, in this case it's Spanish, and avoid equals tolls. You can say avoid equals tolls, comma highways, and it's kind of plain English. It's not as scary as it first sounded in the very beginning. So the next step is testing the request. So you built out the request on this previous page, and here's an example. So this is from our office addresses here to the Starbucks across the highway by my hotel. So you can see here I got the base URL in black. The key is put in, the same key on the previous screen in green. And then my origin location is the office address here. And the destination address is the Starbucks address over there. Now, I could have just put Zoho and Starbucks, but it doesn't always know which Zoho I'm at and which Starbucks I'm going to. Lo and behold, maybe it wants to pull up the Zoho that's in India and the Starbucks that's in India as well. That wouldn't really be of help to me, so that's why I want to specify the actual address, including the city, state, and zip code. So when I ask Google for all this information, this is what Google gives me back. So Google makes it really difficult for me because this is a mess. So this is the API calls. Zoom in so everybody can see. It's got a lot of information here. A lot of it's mumbo jumbo like this. Who knows what that really means? I don't know. I'd have to read the documentation. But it's got a lot of information here, right? I don't really care for all this information. What was I looking for from the very beginning? I was looking for how far it was, distance, right? So let me come over here and let me just search distance, right? So that's distance. I found one. There's another distance, and oh my, there's a third distance. Which distance do I really want? Well, I want the last one because that's the total distance. What these are steps. So just like you get directions on Google, you're going to see, turn right on Hacienda Drive, 1.5 miles. Then turn right on Dublin Boulevard, 0.2 miles, and then you end up there. I guess Google's math is kind of off because they said 1.5 plus 0.2 equals 1.6, but whatever. That's probably just really how it works. So we're looking for this piece of information right here. So we ask Google for all this information. They give us probably more than we want. And maybe I wanted step-by-step instructions that I can come over here and say, turn right on Hacienda Crossings and pull out that information. But I'm just looking for this. And so we'll get back to how we can pull out this one single piece of information out of this whole, jargon that Google gave me back. And so here's a pretty little graphic that says, all we want is that one small little 1.6 miles. So now let's actually get to Creator and start building. So there's 4 steps that we're going to go through, and that's all it really takes to build an API request. The first one is going to be defining our variables. Then we're going to make the API call. Then we need to pick out the information that we want out of that API call. And then the last thing is we need to update a field in Creator, right? Pretty straightforward. Is it straightforward? Is anybody lost? All right, cool. Making sure. First things first, define variables. So I'm just going to go through screenshots. This way everyone has a record of this later and can review it if they want to, or not. I don't care. So we're going to click on Edit under Google Maps integration under my app. And then I'm going to come over to the left-hand side and click on Workflows. And when do I want this stuff to happen is you can see here that when someone fills out the form, a customer, he's not going to enter how far the distance is. That's something that I want to calculate. So generally, I probably should have made this a function. That would be like smart programming because it's better to keep things a little bit cleaner over there. But I'm a bad programmer, so I'm going to build it into the onSuccess form action. So first things first is I need to define the base URL. So I'm just going to declare a variable, and I'm going to use drag and drop builder for all of this. Eventually, when you get good enough, then free flow scripting will be your best friend because you can type faster than building it out this way. But since we're all rookies here, we're going to go through the builder way. So I'm going to define the base URL, and that's just going to be the base that we had on the initial slides, maps.googleapis.com /maps/API, yada, yada, yada. Another Seinfeld reference. Then we have our start location. Start location is going to be the same every single time, right? Because Zoho address doesn't change. So I want the address of Zoho to be 4141 Hacienda Drive, and that's a constant. Nothing's going to change there. But my destination address or the shipping address is going to change for every user. So I need to build out that variable. It's going to be take their address field plus the city field plus the state field plus the zip code field. When that cool new address field comes out, then this will make this job even easier for us, but until then, we must slave like this. Then I need to establish my access key. So I'm just going to take the access key, define it as access key, and copy and paste what Google gave me. So Google has like a fancy website they have this fancy API console that you can go to, and I'll zoom in on it. And here you can request API access. It'll tell me when it was generated, all this information. Please don't steal my identity. And you can see how's it going. You can see your quotas, how often I've used it, and everything about it. Some people offer this, some people don't. Google's just nice about it. So I've done 4 things. I've defined my variables. What's my base URL? What's my 3 parameters? The start location, the end location, and the access key. Now we need to make the API call. So on the very bottom under web data, there's going to be an option that says, So we're looking at line number 5 here. That doesn't work. Squint. Or come up. Don't be shy. You don't have to sit in the back. There's seats up here. So what we need to do is add our variables that we just defined in here. We got to add the base URL, which is going to be specify URL string. And there's 3 parameters, right? Key, start location, and end location. So key, origin, and destination. And then I just plug in the 3 variables that I defined previously. Access key, address Zoho is my origin, and address shipping is going to be my destination. Now I've made the API call, and I need to have all that information collected into one variable. And that variable is going to be called Google Maps response, because that's the response Google Maps is giving me whenever I ask them for information. So all this stuff is going to be stored in that one small little variable there. So you can see that it's kind of built the same way. Get URL, I take the base URL, and then Creator will automatically add all the question marks and ampersands and equal signs and everything for me. I didn't even have to type any of that out. It's just the magic of Creator. So now I've made the API call, and I need to pick out the distance information. So right now, that one variable has this hot mess of information all into it, right? So what I want to do is I need to pick out that one distance field that we had way down here somewhere. So how do I do that? Well, in Creator, we have this really powerful feature called Execute XPath. And you can't see it, VJ, if you squint, you can see it down here in the bottom. And what that does is it'll let us dig into that big tree of information and pick out that one thing. So it's kind of like, you know, the little claw that you put the quarter in and it'll try to pick up a stuffed animal in the vending machine. Except this actually works and it's not a scam like those games, right? So kind of similar, but actually functioning. So there's 3 things we need to do here. First thing is define the variable. So the variable here is going to be the information that we pull out of that hot mess. Then I specify what the hot mess is, and that's Google Maps response. So I'm going to pull out the Google Maps distance out of the Google Maps response, and then I need to specify a path. How do I get there? And if I want to build a way to get there, I can click that link on the right-hand side that's kind of small and I guess not so clear. It says XPath Builder. So when I click on XPath Builder, it's going to take me to a page like this. Here, first thing I can do is I have 3 options. I can copy and paste the URL, which is like the API request, a sample request, or I can copy and paste actual text from this. So if I want to just come over here, click copy, paste, and then paste it into a box, I can do so as well. But in this case, I'll just put the sample URL in there and click get. So it's going to make an API call for me. And what's going to happen is it's going to populate this entire tree on the left-hand side. And this tree is going to look just like the XML document we had. And each one of these tree spots matches up to a different level inside that XML document. So you can see at the very top, we have directional response, then we have status, and then we have route, and all these different pieces of information. All I care about is that one distance field. So what I'm going to do is, if I scroll down a little bit further on the left-hand side, I want to go to the distance field, and then I want to pull out the text. So if you're following it on your screen, then you can see I want the distance, and then I want the text inside there. So I will go distance, and then the text inside there. This is probably the most complicated part. Anybody lost on this one? Or it makes sense? You are lost? Utterly lost. I'll tell you. I'll show you how it's done. How about that? Some of them are steps, and some of them is the total, right? So I'm going to do the copy-paste method, just because it's simpler. Actually, I'll use the URL, because that was the example we had, right? So I'll take this URL, copy, 1, 2, paste it in right here. With me? Click next, right? So this whole thing on the left-hand side got populated for me, right? Now, I can collapse the entire tree, which is not what I want to do. And if I scroll down, I know that, and there's a lot, so I mean, I'm not going to go through them all. But at the very bottom, there's a couple bounds, right? I don't care about bounds, so I'm going to minimize that. I don't care about the overview, so I'm going to minimize that. Copyrights, I'm going to minimize that, right? Then I got a couple more here, and if I scroll back down on this one, or come over here, I got bounds, northeast, southeast, or southwest, overview, copyright. So now we're in this leg tag, right? So we're in this leg tree. If I come over here, then this leg tree is pretty big. So under a leg is everything. It pulls it all up, right? So I'm digging in that leg one. Then there's 2 steps. One is you take a right on Hacienda, and then one is a right on Dublin Boulevard, right? So step 1 is the right on Hacienda, and step 2 step 1 is that. And then if I scroll down a little bit further, just like here, under where step ends, then I have a value for duration and distance, and a start location coordinates and an end location coordinates. You with me? It's kind of, you got to dig through it. But we have this really cool way of testing it. So let's say I clicked on the wrong distance, right? So I'm going to expand step again, and let's say I clicked on a distance that is, where is it? Let's say I clicked on this distance, right? So when I clicked on it, these two fields on the right-hand side got pre-populated. I can click execute, and now it's going to tell me that there's two distances in that one section. There's a 1.5 miles, which is step 1, and there's a 0.2 miles, which is step 2. I don't care about those, so I must have clicked on something wrong. So let me go try the other distance. And kind of it is a guess and check thing. Once you're able to kind of figure out the formatting of it all, then you don't really have to guess as much. But now if I click on duration at the bottom, it's going to be 4 minutes from here. But if I click down to this distance at the very bottom, 1.6, boom, that's the one I was looking for, the 1.6, right? So it's kind of like a guess and check. You got to match up all the stuff and kind of compare it. But once you get that down, then you can click on that Apply XPath button over there. And when I click on Apply XPath, execute, find the text, and click the button with the green arrows, then it's going to pre-populate that entire value right there in that string for me. So what this does is it's kind of like, imagine it to be like a treasure map. You know the start location, or out of the whole map, you do need to find a way to that one piece of information. This is the path to that one piece of information. That's why it's called an XPath. X marks the spot, path is the distance, XPath. So the last thing we want to do is update a field in Creator, right? So this is simple. What we want to do is say the input.estimated delivery distance equals the Google Maps distance, which is the variable that we just pulled out of that XPath. Nothing too scary. We're done. We're done. This is it. 7 lines of code. First 4 lines are just establishing variables, so those aren't even real lines of code in my opinion. Then there's making the API call, so that's our Google Maps response. And you can see here that we take the get URL, which means we're getting information from Google. We're adding the base URL that we have, plus the access key, plus the origin, plus the destination, and that's our full API call. Then we need to dig into that call. So I say Google Maps response dot a path to some piece of information inside that information that Google gave me back, and let's call that Google Maps distance. Then let's take that Google Maps distance and update it. All right, so now we're all done. And now we're finished. So let's go to the final product demo, right? Let's build it out, or kind of see it in action. So I'll type in my name. I'll say the Austin office address where I'm from, 805 Las Cimas Parkway, Austin, Texas, 78746, my hood. Click submit. Done, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come to my shipping address report, and I got 805 Las Cimas Parkway, Austin, Texas, 1,700 miles from home is where I am right now. That's it. Want to see other examples, or do you trust me that it works? All right. Next thing you want to see, or you see here, is I got this cool little button down here on the right-hand side. It says show map image. I want to pop into the workflow here, and I made a function. And this function is kind of combining a lot of stuff. So I'm going to break this down. Like a good programmer, I actually added notes in here so you can kind of identify what I'm doing at each step. So the first thing we're going to do is take the same 4 things we did previously. I take the base URL, my starting address, shipping address, and my access key. I make an API call. Except this time I'm going to pull out a couple different pieces of information. Instead of the total distance from me to the customer, I kind of want to see a map. I want to visualize it a little bit better, right? So this time I'm going to take the latitude and longitude. So here in this long line of code, you can see here I got the end location, which is the customer's address that they submitted, and I have LAT for lat and LNG for longitude. You don't have to know how I got here. We just followed the same XPath steps that we did before, and it'll populate a different path to a different piece of information. We're going to use a different API call this time. Instead of maps.googleapis.com/map/directions, we're going to go maps.googleapis.com/map/static map. And static map is a map that doesn't change. It's just a picture. So it's just a different API call that Google Maps has for different information that can come back. When I made this API call, what did Google give me back? They gave me back a bunch of text. With this API call, Google's going to give me back a picture. We're going to see that picture. So there's a couple other parameters that this picture requires. I need to know how big I want the picture to be, what scale or what zoom do I want to be in on that Google map. And so I need to enter the city and the state. So I'm going to show this is what I'm going to show. I'm going to show a map. The map is going to be centered in on the city. And then on that city, it's going to show a pinpoint of where the customer lives relative to the city center, right? So you Google any city name, it's going to take you probably to like the heart of downtown, and then it's going to show you a map kind of where you are or where the customer is relative to the downtown point. Everyone understand what they kind of expect to see here? So the center of the map is going to be this customer's city and state, and then the size of the map is 640 by 640 pixels. Scale is going to be the scale. And then we got a couple other pieces of information here. I'm not even quite sure what it means. I kind of just copied it from Google's website, and that's what coding is all about, copying and pasting. And so you can add some markers. This marker is going to be red. The label is going to be called customer. And let's just change this to customer address too, to show you that I know what I'm doing. Click save. And then it's also going to put this little red marker at this latitude and this longitude, which are the two variables that I defined up here, latitude, longitude, right? And so this variable right here, it actually controls a URL, and a URL that goes directly to a picture instead of bringing back text. And so what I want to do is use the open URL function to open a website, and I'm going to open that URL, and I'm just going to open it up in a new window. Kind of make sense? Nothing too crazy? All right, cool. So I'm going to save this script. And then I'm not sure, because I was working on this presentation most of the day. Did anybody show you how to make these pretty buttons here? Or no? All right, so let me show you how to make these pretty buttons here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to a report, because that's the page I was on previously. So this is my report. On the left-hand side, you're going to see a section that says Custom Actions. And what a custom action is, it's basically going to have a button that gets displayed on that report that lets me execute a function at will. So instead of throwing a function in the code and letting it run at certain on-load or on-edit, I can have it executed whenever I feel like clicking it. So let's add a new custom action here. And this is, I know what I'm doing, right? And I wanted to show it on every single record, right? Success message, I don't need a success message because I know I'm successful. So I'll scroll down, and the function I want to pick is the function we just made, show map image, right? I click create. Come back over to my report, do a magical refresh. Now I got another button that says I know what I'm doing. So if I click on I know what I'm doing, it's going to pop open a new tab, and it's going to show a picture of Austin. The downtown Austin, this is what Austin looks like, except, there you go, zoomed in too much. We live out here in the hills. This is where our Austin office is, and that's downtown Austin. That's University of Texas, the best school in the world. And that's Austin. We can also see the second best place in the world, Jerry's World. Oh yeah, it's more than that. Show me Zoho. Here, I'll make it realistic. We're going to Jerry's World. Don't let me down. There you go. Arlington, it's not really Dallas, but it's close enough. And that's where Cowboy Stadium is. That's the address that he put, and that's the actual AT&T Stadium. So now you can click on things, and you can pop up a picture, and that's where Anaheim is, and Disneyland is somewhere in there. It's at the bottom of you can see it's at the bottom of the page. That's where Disneyland is, some parks and lakes and stuff. But yeah, so now you have a map, and you know how far you are from the guy, and that's pretty much it.